And welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I'm your host, Michael. You'll notice that Carla is missing tonight. She unfortunately got the stomach bug, so we wish her well and good thing to feel better. So, with me tonight is Dr. Alexa Costa.
Hello. Thank you for
Well,
having me on your show.
thank you for being a guest.
Thank you.
So, one thing I'd like to ask is in your bio, you say you're I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to pronounce this, a thanatologist?
Yes, you said it right. So,
Wow.
so
That's
that
a,
is someone. I'm sorry, that's a mouthful, right?
it is.
So, for those people who have not heard of thanatology, it is the science behind the studying of death and dying. And so, I've dedicated most of my adult life to that. And I'm a researcher and a everything having to do with the paranormal and paranormal phenomena, especially when it comes to death and dying and the afterlife.
So, what got you started with that?
Well, my psychic gifts, I am a psychic medium. And to be more specific, I'm an intuitive psychic medium, which is someone that uses intuition to tap into the energy that surrounds us, which is the title of your podcast as well. And so this is a naturally occurring gift that I've have had all of my life. And there was really no starting point to the interest in this type of phenomena. But as I got older and grew up, matured, and learned more about this energy, I started studying it. Even though my professional trajectory took me in an entirely different direction, this is something that has always been in the background for me and something I've never let go. And through the ins and outs of life, the ups and downs, I was then in a position where I had to make a decision on which way my life was going to go, in which direction from this particular moment going forward. And so I decided it was the right time for me to devote 100% of my time to the paranormal and to the research of death and dying. So,
So, out of curiosity, because I hear you can get a reverend's license online, and there's a lot of debates on that. Did you go to college to study for this, or how did you get your doctorship in this?
okay, so I started off in the path of being a lawyer. So I actually have a Juris Doctor, which is the educational background to be an attorney. I was a lawyer in my previous life, this lifetime, but in my previous career. I did lose my law license through a series of events. And prior to losing my law license, I had already established myself as a thanatologist in the professional arena. And I was able to keep it, and that it just grew from there. So I am a certified thanatologist, and this is through the Association of Death Education and Counseling, ADEC, so ADEC. And I have maintained my certification for well over a decade now.
So I'm just kind of curious, how do you maintain a certification in that? Like, do you have to do case studies or?
Yes. So you have to do research. It depends on the path that you take. So there's a lot of leeway in how you can maintain your credential. So I chose the path of research, and being a published author helps me maintain my credentials. I'm also a guest speaker and lecturer in various different arenas. So one of those arenas is I teach doctors how to maintain bedside manner when their patients die, and in dealing with the families. So that is another way that I help maintain my credential. So it's hands-on, continuing education credits really is how it is. And every 3 years, I have to sit for an examination. And so I can, in lieu of the examination, I can present the credential of a published manuscript, for example. And that's the path I've taken now, is I officially have finished my first full length book manuscript on the afterlife and connecting to the other side. And so that is how I will be maintaining my credentials. So for the next 3 years, my credential expires December 2023, and the time to turn in my my credentialing for the next 3 years is November of 2023. So this book comes out just in time for me to submit for that. So yeah, so it's the Afterlife Connection, and I think I have talked to you about that. So the official title of the book is The Afterlife Connection.
Right, which I gotta say is a subject that I find really interesting, and so I'm kind of curious. How do you study the afterlife? Like, do you
Okay.
look at certain cultural? Do you look at them all?
Yes, 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 and yes. So it begins with, well, for me in particular, it begins with studying the religious aspect of how cultures see death and dying based on their religious and cultural views. And from there, it expands to the scientific research that has been done in the medical fields of people who have experienced near death experiences throughout the world, and I do case studies on that. I also have interviewed several people who have faced these near death experiences, and that's how the research continues. And you just put all of that together, and you come to your own conclusions on, you know, your personal beliefs then on how this energy attaches beyond the grave. So,
So when you say near death experiences, are these ones that you take people at their word, or do you have to have certain proof that they were declared dead and came back?
yeah. So they most often have medical records to show that they were declared dead and came back. There are a lot that I take on their anecdotal um, weight, you know, their anecdote, meaning their perception of what happened and how they perceive the events to have happened. Sometimes you might run across people that didn't have this near death experience in a hospital setting. So it's difficult for there to be proof, like a paper trail that they actually died. There was no one there, you know, to take their vitals or whatever. So to um, there's no one there to put it down on paper for them and to create that record. So there are many, especially in countries where they don't have access to medical care as easily as we do here in the United States, where you have to take their word for it. And, you know, I take a lot of what I'm told with a grain of salt. But when you hear story after story that resonates, that makes sense, that aligns with those that are documented, then you take all of that, you throw out the fluff, and you keep what makes sense. So that's how I do it. And there's just countless of people that have experienced these near death experiences that I'm sure that I've only tapped into a very small percentage of them. But there are at least 25,000 cases right now documented within the US that I had access to and still have access to. Anyone can have access to this information. You just have to go down that rabbit hole if it's something that interests you.
Wow, I didn't even realize that they
Yeah.
were available, those records. I thought they would all be
Yeah.
protected under HIPAA.
Well, it's not that you're accessing their medical records, you're accessing the research based off of those medical records. So that's what you have access to. And
Oh,
then if you make a direct connection, or you can always ask for those records to be released from, if you're doing an interview, for example, with someone who has experienced it, they'll gladly sign over, they'll hand you their records most of the time. So, but there's plenty of research that you can find online. You do have to go down that rabbit hole to access it, but it's there, and it's there under medical journals. It's there under scientific journals and other investigators in the paranormal arena that have put together lots of information and access to these studies. So it's pretty fascinating. And it does take dedication to go through it all because it's thousands and thousands of pages worth of material. But it is intriguing and it's fascinating, and it opens up this whole new world that a lot of people just haven't been exposed to, as far as near death experiences and what happens to the person's body, the energy, the psychology, all of that combined after they've experienced something as phenomenal as that.
so how does one, I'm just curious, go from thanatology to the red carpet of Hollywood?
So I am a writer and have been a writer for many years, and I that's how I was introduced to Hollywood, is as a writer. I started off doing what's called script doctoring, where I was called in to make sure that scripts based on the paranormal were accurate. Not so much technically accurate, but accurate in the information and how it was presented in the writing. So I would go up and clean up some of the original script writing that was done. I'll go in there and either give my opinions on what changes need to be made, or they've hired me to make those actual changes. And by they, I mean um, production houses. They'll hire me to do that for them. And then I ventured off and did my own as well. So, but I would much rather, I'm a pretty introverted person, so I much rather work behind the scenes than in front of the camera. And so it's a challenge for me to even sit here to do this interview with you. I'm pretty much camera shy, and I don't particularly enjoy it. So, yeah.
Well, you're doing great and you're
Well, thank
looking
you.
natural. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you.
so when you say you've doctored scripts, what type of projects can you say which ones you worked on that people may know or
Yeah. So we're going to keep that one above the line here and not give details on that, because I am a fixer, if you will. I mean, a fixer of these scripts. I get paid to do the fixing, but I don't get credited for it necessarily. And so the original writers maintain that credit. So without taking away from their credit on those projects, I can tell you that I have worked on many scripts where they talk about what it actually is to um, have encounters with the other side, and what the psychology is behind it once someone has that type of experience. So I've worked on a lot of popular films that many people would recognize, and it's just it's a broad spectrum of topics that I have written about. And I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but yes, you would recognize a lot of those movies. But because I am not a credited writer on the movie, then it would be like taking credit away from the person who is actually listed as the writer. But we're talking about movies, hauntings. We're talking about demonic possessions. We're talking about mediumship. So any movies that you see where, tarot card readers maybe or fortune tellers come on, I've had a lot of, I've been included in a lot of those projects. So,
that's pretty cool.
mhm.
So,
I think so.
what projects of yours have come out that you can talk about and share that people may want to check out?
Okay, so I do have a television show that is still under contract, not under contract, but under consideration with the Travel Channel. And we've been working on this project now for since COVID, so just things take a lot of time when it comes to Hollywood. So a movie, for example, that you might see come out this summer, it might have been finished maybe 2 years ago. And so the process of production and we have pre-production, production, and post-production before it even comes out to a streaming network or the movie theater, right? So it's a long process. And so what we're working on right now is a haunted travel show called Haunted Holiday. And that is where I am one of the main protagonists, but because I am not the type of person that wants to be on camera, I have a major contribution to the project, but not major time in front of the camera. And so that one is, we're just waiting to see when we get the green light for that. So it's called Haunted Holiday, and it is all about, it's travel-based, focused on paranormal travel within the United States.
So, have you started shooting anything yet or gone to any locations?
So all of the pre-production is done, but the actual production has not started. So pre-production includes the scouting, it includes the casting, the writing. So all of that part is already done. And so we're just waiting on the green light. And when we're waiting on green light, that means budgets. So we're waiting on a budget, the
Right.
approval of financing. Without financing, projects really get stalled. Um, and so, with as with anyone, there's so many people that are in this paranormal arena when it comes to Hollywood and really anywhere where it's hard to get these projects started with because of lack of funding. So they're for the most part not going to get the same type of funding that more mainstream television or movies get. And so it's just the investors have to weigh out the risk, and they have to weigh out, you know, their ROI on the project, right? So they're interested in the bottom line, and if it's not the right time, then it doesn't get the green light until the investors all say, okay, it's a go. So we really
Right.
don't have control over that part unless I come up with my own funding, which it takes a lot of money. So that's not possible for me. It's not feasible right now. So yeah,
Right. Well, we wish you luck, because
thank you.
especially since Destination Fear and a lot of those shows came public saying that Travel Channel's dropping a lot of paranormal shows right now.
Yeah,
So that may
yeah,
be helpful for you, that they're cleaning out and making space
yeah,
for new ones.
yeah. But you never know, right? So we don't. We just keep it moving. We don't hold out for um, we're not sitting here waiting for that to happen. So you just, in Hollywood, you just move on to your next project. So because there's really nothing that you can do. If you get a green light and the funding comes through, great, and you move forward with production, but you don't sit back and wait for that to happen. You just keep it moving. And so for me, keeping it moving was writing my book that's set to come out, and so that's how I've maintained the last almost year, was writing that book. So uh, it's very I don't know that the we have a lot of things going on. Like right now, the potential writer strike that's going on. There's so many factors that go into play, and so I do know that the Travel Channel um, is I don't know how to word it, but probably slimming down on those type of shows, or cutting back, and so we can't do anything but sit back and wait.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, we wish you luck and hope it
Thank you.
is a success. And
Thank you.
if not with Travel Channel, that somebody else picks up interest in it and takes
Yep.
and helps you run with it.
Yes.
So, your book is about the afterlife. What can you tell us that you've found out about the afterlife?
So the book is specifically about communication from beyond the grave, and it is a collection of stories from clients that I've read for, that I've helped connect them to their loved ones on the other side. And it is actually an expanded version of the first ebook that I went from writing for film and television to writing for just writing book manuscripts, right? So the very first one that I wrote was just a short ebook, and this is the expanded version of that short ebook. And so what it talks about is my um, career trajectory into this field of psychic mediumship, and it highlights a lot of my past clients and current clients. Experiences with communicating with their loved ones who have crossed over, and so the book is completely focused on that, with a little bit of the research thrown in there, but that's not the main focus of the book. It's really a book to help people heal through the grief and loss of losing someone that they love and is close to them. And so hopefully it helps people who are grieving get some hope and encouragement from the stories that they'll find in this book. That's my hope and ideal with this, and we'll see. We'll see how the reception that I get with it.
So, I'm kind of curious, are there any cases that stick with you that you're like, wow, this really, the communication you're getting with them brings more
Mm.
comfort to me than, say, going to a haunted location and talking to a spirit that's that's long past, but I mean, I know there's differences, but what I'm meaning is there like they tell you more about what it's like on the other side?
So yeah, I have the entire book is really made up of those type of stories that stick out. I've read for thousands of people, and there's uh, maybe 75 stories within the book. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. There's enough, but there's not the thousands. These are like the highlights of the best of the best. And so, to give you some examples, and I've gotten permission from every single person that I'm writing about to put this story out. I've changed their names so to protect their privacy. But so to give you examples of how these stories, I'm not really sure that I'm going to answer your question. So hopefully I do answer it. So the way that it helps with healing when someone is bereaved, when they're grieving the loss of their loved one, a lot of times people lose faith when a loved one dies, whether they die suddenly or expectedly, such as a long illness or old age. Um, but the pain and suffering is the same. We hurt whenever our loved ones die. It's painful. It's a painful experience for the most part. And so the way that I am able to help a bereaved person heal from that trauma is by bringing in that faith, um, maybe their faith that was lost along in that process, and by helping them with connecting to their loved ones. And the way that I do it is through intuition. I read the energy that is around them, and it helps me connect to the other side. So I'm not really sure if I'm answering your question. So I know that you wanted me to contrast it with like a paranormal haunting at a location that you investigate out. So I do investigations as well. So maybe could you rephrase that question in a different way?
So I'm just curious because I know a lot of people wonder what the afterlife is like. And so I'm just curious if in these readings that their loved ones are like, hey, we're in a field, loving this field. I have a garden to tend to, or are they like, oh, there's this peace and calmness around. We kind of don't really do much, but
Okay, got it.
yeah, I'm just curious if there's ever been a picture painted.
So yes, but not very frequently, right? So what happens most frequently is that I'll get validation of the connection to their loved one by getting details of how they died. That is like the number one way that I am able to connect and validate with my clients, that their loved one has actually entered the room and validated their presence with us. So they give me a lot of details about their life here on earth, their physical presence here on earth, and that is how I connect. So I get lots of details about their life while they were here physically living. And on occasion, yes, I do get the um, very detailed scenario of mostly who they're with. So I'll get names of who they're hanging out with, if you will. I don't know how else to say it. Um, and like I'll get mentions of them not being able to be present at a certain event or time and location that my client was hoping. So this is just an example. So for example, if I had a client that I was reading that didn't feel the presence of their loved one at their wedding, their loved one might come through and give me the reason why they weren't at that particular moment in their presence. So yeah. So
Right.
they might say, like, for example, um, they weren't allowed to be there because they had this other duty to attend to, or whatever the case may be. So just a general example, but that's something that might come up for me, but not how you mentioned it, like the painting of what it looks like on the other side. No, that's not generally how it comes out for me in my readings, but very detailed on how it is while they were here on Earth.
Right. And so that brings actually a point that I've kind of forgotten about, but through my spiritual growth, I always view like when you pass, you do what's called a life review, and you're met with loved ones, and beyond that, really nothing I've never really thought about. And so it's interesting when you say like their loved one wasn't available because they had other tasks to do. That I
Yeah,
think that's something we don't think about is, we assume just because they're in the quote afterlife, they're not
right.
doing anything, but life continues. Would you agree?
Right. I agree. So, yes, I agree. So, um, from my research and studies and from interviewing people who have had near death experiences, they do detail this meeting up with family members, with their friends, with their pets, even as they are crossing over to the other side. And they also detail that a lot of them, most of them, tell me that they're given a choice of whether to come back or stay, and sometimes they're not given a choice. Sometimes they're just sent back because it's not their time to go and because they have other tasks here on earth to fulfill while they're in the physical form. So the same thing happens. And I am just going to say it's from my experience only, because people will have a broad spectrum of opinions on what happens after we die. None of us know for sure, like we're still here. So unless we've experienced that near death experience, we can't really say for sure this is what happened to me or this is what happens when we die, because it's an unknown. We don't know it. And as much as we want to rely on our religious teachings or our philosophies or our cultural traditions, the truth is we don't know. And until we cross over, we won't know. But when you take everyone's accountings that have had these near death experiences, and they're all detailing pretty much the same thing over and over again, even children are describing what it's like to die in very much the same way that adults describe it, but just using their own language that they know and understand as young children, then it's kind of hard not to believe that this is what happens when we die, right? And so it's really interesting in that regard, because almost everybody says they are met with their loved ones. In some cases, they are met by their interpretation of God or Jesus, or an angel, right? Whatever name or description you want to give to that being, it's uh, uh, an energy field, if you will, that they interpret it to be Jesus, Mary, an angel, God. Whatever term you put on it, everyone is describing these same happenings over and over. And it's actually really beautiful to listen to someone describe what happens when we die. But until we get there, we won't know for sure, or until there's a breakthrough in science that definitely says, okay, this is what happens and here's the proof of it, we're not going to know. And so we rely on our own belief systems and what we want to accept as the truth until we get to that point. So,
All right. And
yeah.
we actually have a question in the chat group.
Okay.
Sam Thomas says, if you've answered this question already, I apologize, but are you into Akashic, meaning the
Um,
Akashic
Akashic
records?
records. Yeah, I have studied Akashic records. I've studied about them, but it's not my field of study. So I don't incorporate that into my work. So I can't speak on that intelligently, because it's not something that I'm an expert in or that I've researched enough to speak on that. But thank you for the question. So yes, so
Right.
that I have heard a lot of I have heard people refer to the Akashic records, and but beyond that, I don't have experience with it.
Right. And from what I understand, they're like the records of the soul.
Yes,
So that, I mean, if you're able to tap into that, wow. But at the same
yeah,
token, though, um, my personal understanding of the Akashics are nobody can read somebody else's Akashic records, so they're they have guardians on that and energy guards, kind of safeguards, I guess.
yeah.
So I'm not sure. when people say they can read the records, I'm not sure how they're getting permission. It must be because you granted permission on a
Mm.
subconscious energetic level.
Yeah, so I don't know that either, but the people that I have interviewed that have had personal experience with reading their own records, they have described to me that they are shown basically their life up to the point of passing. And these are people with near death experiences. And they're also given the choice to return back to Earth into their physical form because this is where the task comes in, the unfinished business that they were sent here to fulfill while they're on earth, also known as our soul's purpose, right? Each of us, and depending, I'm saying this very loosely because we all have different beliefs. In my beliefs, I think that we all have a soul's purpose, something that we have been sent here on earth to fulfill, either by our own choosing or by our higher powers choosing, right? So a gift that we've been given to come back. And speaking of people with near death experiences who have been sent back to fulfill that task, and each and every one of us here having a purpose, a soul purpose for being alive and being here on earth. And everyone's life is important, everyone's life has meaning. And then it's up to us, based on these records and based on the information that I've read and received, we are here to learn these lessons while we're here on earth. And it is up to us then to discover, to remember what we were sent to earth for. And once we discover that soul's purpose, then our job, our duty is to fulfill it to the best of our ability. And that ability is really infinite because it's a God-given or universally given task, power, and or duty. So I feel that once we discover what we are sent here to earth for, when we discover that soul's purpose, there is nothing inhibiting us from being able to achieve that soul purpose.
Right. And Sam commented, "Thank you. I've just stumbled across this info. I'm curious now. Lots of laughs or lots of loves." I love how that one can go
Okay.
both ways. And then he
So you're
says,
very welcome.
he goes, "I feel that what's in your heart of hearts is where you will go, just out of what's within one's soul."
Okay. I'm not sure I understand that. So,
I think what he's saying is, if I'm understanding it the way I understand it, is when you're learning what I would call lessons, or you say the soul's purpose, as long as we're following our heart and doing what's in our heart, then we will, find our path. And no matter how hard it is, we'll always find our way through it. And I think
yeah.
my feeling is, though, as we're coming across, because I don't talk about it much, but I've had, I believe, probably 3 near-death experiences. And every time I came back, there's always this little bit of what was I thinking moments when I come back, because it's like, it was so nice there. Why couldn't I stay there longer?
Yeah. I have heard that a lot. Almost everyone says that. Almost all of them regret coming back, except for those that have young children that want, that was their bigger pull, was to be here with their children. So I get it. I haven't experienced it, but I definitely get what you're saying. So,
Yeah, and I actually had I guess I would call a spiritual teacher, who told me one day, I said, I feel like I, was sent here to help and do all of this, but I'm struggling with this because how do you know? And she said that's the hardest thing for people to deal with in their hearts and with their purpose and lessons, is like the example she gave me is, if a child runs out in the street to chase a ball. You have the opportunity to save them. Do you save them? And I said, absolutely. The child is worth saving. And she goes, but now that child a week later will get hit by a train because that was their soul's purpose or lesson was to learn. And because you interjected, they had to learn it more harsh. Which would have been better, the car or the train? And I was like, well, damn, you put it like that. It's like, geez, So,
So,
yeah.
so going back to the person who sent the message, now it's very clear, I think, what they were trying to say based then on your explanation and now with this example that you've given. So there is, you will know now, in your heart of hearts, you will know, you will discover what your soul's purpose is, because everything comes into alignment. It's a divine alignment that occurs. And when that happens, your soul is at ease. You don't feel the pressure, the tension, or the wondering if you are doing what you were meant to be doing. It just aligns. It feels right. It feels like you have fulfilled what you've been, you could actually feel that fulfillment. I could tell you that I have found my soul's purpose, and it is in doing what I do. And I'll tell you that before, I had a very successful career as a lawyer. I hated every minute of it. Not every minute, that's an exaggeration, but overall, I knew that it wasn't what I was aligned to do in this lifetime. And so when all of these things happened in my life that led me to this path, to fully embracing this path, I feel that for the last several years, I have felt that, okay, this is where I'm meant to be. This is where my soul's purpose is aligning. And I'm happy, and it's just a different feeling. That before, it was a struggle, the having to prove myself, the having to be the best at that. And now I don't have any of those qualms. I do what I do, and I accept my gift, and I live in this peace and harmony every single day without questioning, am I doing the right thing? So I think that for a lot of people who stress about wondering if you're doing the right thing, are you doing what your soul has been called to do? From my personal experience, I think when you reach that level, you will know without a doubt that you are aligned with your divine purpose. And so with this example that you've given with this lady saying, do I save that child? I think most of us would save the child, because maybe our soul's purpose was to save that child. And maybe whatever happens between the week that we save them and the week that they eventually suffer and die, maybe that week was a turning point in that child's life for them to fulfill their soul's purpose, right? So it's not really an intervention or an interjection to, you can't, although we can deviate from our soul's purpose, we will eventually get to where we were destined for. And so the same thing with this example of this child, that child's destiny maybe was to have an early death, but what happened between point A and B, being saved and dying, in that span of that week, maybe that child fulfilled his or her soul's purpose. We don't know that. That's beyond our control. So
Right.
So save the child. Save the child. That's what I'm saying. So yes.
Yeah.
And any time, it doesn't have to be a child, right? So maybe the test that we've been given is to be that friend that that's needed, or to provide, support to someone who needs it. Those are the tests that we face while we live. And so I feel that universally, and when I say that, I also mean God. So whatever term you want to put in there, we are given these tests as we go through life, and we fill all these little roles in people's lives as we live our life and as we reach our destiny. And so we can choose to do the right thing or not do the right thing. We could choose to close our eyes to when someone is hurting or in need. And it just keeps adding. You either contribute or you deduct from your purpose here on earth by the acts that you do while you're living. So I'm saying that kindness and love serve a greater purpose in your own trajectory. So rather
Right.
than rather than turning that blind eye and not offering the help.
Right. And I understand that. And yeah, I find more comfort in your explanation than the one that I was
Yeah.
given as a teenager. And Sam corrected me that I mistakenly said he and it's a she. And so I apologize for that. And she
Okay.
says, yes, thank you, Alexa.
You're welcome.
I'm
Thank
looking
you.
for that. It will be nice to feel that.
Yeah. There will be no mistake. Believe me, no mistake in it. You will know.
And so, one of the things that I'm kind of curious about too is when you say, like in my own experience, when we're given the choice to come back or to stay, how, it's what do you find is an aftermath of that? Are people coming back with more awarenesses, different personality traits, or like minor changes, or are they more commonly just the same person, just with the more awareness?
So, in my experience, what I have found is not a completely changed person, but a very changed person in the way they perceive life here on earth. Um, Almost everyone loses the fear of death and dying. Not that they welcome death, but when the time comes, they don't fear it. And there's just a new awareness of what is beyond the veil, what is waiting for us after death. And so I think that it lessens that fear of the anxiousness of not knowing what to expect. So I'll give you a personal example. I have not experienced a near death experience, but I have been sick twice in my life, once with pneumonia and once with COVID, to the point where I believed I was dying. And the feelings that washed over me at that point was calm and peace. And I wasn't afraid because it felt beautiful, right? It was better than the suffering that I was experiencing because of the illness. And when I look at that experience, and probably the experience that you've had, but definitely the people that I've spoken with in detail about their near death experiences, then there's an all knowing that what lies ahead is something so beautiful and so peaceful and not even painful at all, that you're not afraid of it. So those people that come back from their near death experiences, they look at life differently. So they are definitely changed, and there's no way to undo that experience. So they will carry that with them for the rest of their lives, and all the choices that they make from that moment forward will be based on that experience and what their newfound knowledge is. So
Right. And I have to agree because I can honestly say each of the times that I remember coming back were totally different. Like one time I had a bruise on my chin because apparently I passed out and blacked out and lost consciousness hitting a bed frame that was solid wood. So that wasn't too pleasant. And another time my body reacted to me coming back in. And so, yeah, I find it interesting that even as much as we can say we're used to it, it's still unexplainable because there is no it'll always be this that it's constantly changes.
got it. So I don't know anything really about your near death experiences. And so I'm listening to what you're saying, but I don't know the details. I'm sure your regular listeners do. I apologize, but I didn't know that you had that type of experiences, because multiple. So,
Actually, I don't talk about them very often because I feel like because I have no documented proof, because I never went to a hospital, that people won't believe. So I tend to just sweep it under the rug as a personal experience, and that's it.
Okay, so then this goes to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show, where I do interview a lot of people that have no documented proof of them undergoing. And then it's up to me using that analytical, that rational mind to think, okay, I listen to everyone's story with no judgment, first of all. And then I pick and choose, right? What seems legitimate and what doesn't. And then when it doesn't seem legitimate, I ask questions. I don't just take it for face value. I keep asking questions until it makes sense to me. And so even with me feeling so sick that I was ready to die because it felt peaceful at that moment, there's no documented anything on that. I was home by myself, and who my dog is not going to vouch for me, you know? And so we just have to go on faith, right? And we have to then use our rational thinking on what makes sense to us to accept, or not, whatever people tell us, right? So you holding in your experience is probably doing you a disservice. The more you talk about it, it's like a cathartic feeling. Am I saying that word right? Like it
Right.
heals. It helps heal. And so the more you talk about it, the more you spread that message, give people your experiences, it helps. And maybe your soul's purpose is to spread the word on what your experiences were on the other side. So we look at all of these things, right? And so when
Right.
we are trying to fulfill our destiny, you look at those experiences. You've had unusual experiences, not once, but 3 times, I think is what you said. Is that right? You've had it
Right.
3 times. So what are the odds of one human being experiencing 3 different near-death experiences in their one lifetime here on Earth? So meditate on that and see what the universe is trying to tell you. Maybe your soul's purpose is to teach others, people like myself, and just generally about what it's like to die and what it's like on the other side, and what, I don't know, have no idea what you experienced or what you saw, but maybe that is what even one person needs to hear to keep them going, right? So your story is valuable. We are all valuable. Our stories are all valuable, but you have a very unique experience that can potentially help answer a lot of questions that people might be having.
Right. And I guess the other reason why I kind of don't bring it up very much is because I have memory of what led up to it, and then I have memory of coming back. The in between part where I'm actually on the other side, it's like completely blank. It's like I feel like I have ideas, but I can't really say, oh, yeah, this time I talked to this person or saw this person, or I was over in this place. It's like it's completely blank. It's like you were saying A to B, and all that gray stuff in the middle just vanished from memory.
Okay, so maybe that itself, there's a reason behind that, right? So
And I would say yes, because it brings to mind that when I was younger, I would go to see a medium, somebody who could read, or talk a channel, and we would test the tapes before because they were recorded, so you could go back and listen. When we tested the tapes, everything was fine. When the session was over, I would go into the car with my parents, put the tape in, and go, "You guys got to hear this." All of them, and I mean all of them. I probably did maybe 10, 20 readings with this person, all blank. The tapes never recorded the session.
so maybe your session with that medium was only for you to hear, right? It was meant for you and not for you to share with others. So I would, that's what the first thing that comes to my mind is that. And whatever it is that was transmitted between the two of you was meant for the two of you, was meant for you mostly, because the medium is just the messenger. So,
Right.
and yeah, so, and now that you've said that, and coupled with your um, lack of memory of what has happened on the other side, I, I'm not trying to read you. I don't have your permission to read you, but
Oh, you
if
can
I,
if you want.
so, okay, so the impression that I was getting when you're giving me this story, and because I am an energy reader, it's actually a dark and negative energy surrounding the story that you have given me, even from the moment that you had said you crossed over without you knowing, or without you having given any details of not remembering. I didn't know even that you had crossed over, and then knowing that, and then knowing that you don't remember. At that moment, a very negative energy surrounded you that felt like it was a protective mechanism for you, so that you're protected of what you encountered on the other side. And so I don't know, I don't know if it was good or bad for you to know or not know, but if I would trust what I'm feeling and the energy that surround you, which I do trust what I'm feeling, it feels like it was a protection mechanism for you. And because maybe what you faced on the other side wasn't very pleasant. And so, but it's just my take on what I'm reading around you. And the sessions with the medium feel the same way as well. And when I say to you that it's something that maybe wasn't meant to be shared, it feels as if that connection that you made with that medium, and keeping in mind the mediums are only messengers. There's nothing special about us. We just give the message. We're, for the most part, I can't speak for every medium out there. Speaking of my abilities myself, I can give you the message that comes through, but I don't have any control as to what is coming through, right? So sometimes the messages that I give to my clients are very specific to that one person, and are the type of messages that maybe should stay with that person. And what I'm saying with you, with your connection with that particular medium and the lack of recording on those tapes, also serves the purpose of protection for you. So I don't know what you have going on. I don't know anything about those discussions with the medium, but it feels like it has a very negative connotation, a very negative um, underlying feeling of that. So,
All
all
right.
right. So yeah.
Well, I gotta say, from a perspective of paranormal investigator that I am, I I kind of find it interesting that you say dark and then it's protective, because I always think of light as the protector, and so
Yeah.
it's kind of making me step back and think of, when I encounter stuff now in my, when I if I get that dark feeling, it's like I got to step back and be like, is this a protection
Right.
feeling, or is this really something that I should turn around and walk away from? So you've given
Yeah.
me something to think about.
So I'll tell you that light and dark, right? These are energies, that they're energies that we feel. Dark is usually attributed to evil and to malicious, right? But we gain power from the darkness just as much as we do from the light. And sometimes they balance each other out. A lot of times they balance each other out. I, as a medium, sometimes pull my energy from the dark, and sometimes I pull my energy from the light. And it just depends on the person that I'm reading for and what they've brought to me and how I respond to them. Does that make sense?
It does. And it also makes sense that, like you're saying, if the darkness protects me as much as the light, that I was told by a medium that I'm one of the rare people they've ever met that can freely walk through, like, on the astral plane, the shadow world,
There you
without
go.
being harmed and come back okay. And that kind of makes sense, because it's like I kind of work in, like, one foot in one side and one foot in the other.
Okay, that's perfect. So now let me say this to you. Let's get rid of that phrase kind of, and let's embrace it for what it is, right? You have this, um, I don't want to call it a gift, but let's say a gift, right? You have this ability to take from the darkness as much as you can take from the light. And the medium was right in saying that not everybody can do that. It's very rare for somebody to be able to work in both. And so own it is what I'm saying. So let's get rid of the kind of. I'm validating for you what somebody has already said to you in the past. So I don't talk ever to you. I know we are Facebook friends, but we've never had these deep conversations, not like this. So I didn't know that has already been shown to you by another medium. This is a validation, or should act as a validation for you, that this energy that surrounds you is coming through the same as it was with the other medium. We are just messengers of what we see, hear, feel. I can't make this up for you, right? There's no way that I would know that you have already been, that this gift has already been acknowledged for you in the past. So
Right.
take it as a
And
validation and own it.
right, and I do, and I appreciate it, and it is like you say, like, because I've never said it, nobody ever knew until this episode, obviously, that's ever been mentioned. So the fact that you picked up on it as well is like double confirmation for me that, yeah, I wasn't imagining that it was said, that it was really said. And I can say, for me, I feel the resonance of it, that yes, that is something for me. And I think that's why when I go into locations where a lot of noises or stuff that normally scare people off, I just stand there and I'm just like, okay,
Because
what
you're
else you got?
protected. Yes, because you are protected. I am exactly the same way. So I resonate with you on that. Um, I completely resonate with what you're saying. So I love to hear that. I love that um, we've been able to validate what has been said to you in the past, things that you already know. You already know these because you lived this experience, right? So you don't need me to tell you, but it's really amazing to hear it and to get that validation.
Well, and it also is as much as that as it's something that's nice to be reminded of, that you may believe it and have it in your core, but we are only human, and there are times that like you caught me saying kind of. I don't normally say kind of when I'm talking about myself, and so it's nice to be reminded and saying, yes, I am this, and
Yeah.
you see it, I feel it, so therefore it is.
Yeah, we are all powerful beings, and we all have our unique gifts. And I am much like you, into where I can walk into the darkness and I can feel fully protected. I'm not afraid. It's not to say that I never feel fear, but when it comes to haunted locations, or where it comes to negative energy, I don't feel any fear, because I walk in there knowing that I'm fully protected, and it's just another normal day on the job for me. Right? So I think that's what you're describing for you as well. While other people
Right.
might cower in fear, you boldly walk in and you do your job and you leave, because you know that you're safe, that you're protected, and that you're just doing your job. And there's nothing to fear when you walk in with that power and that faith and that belief that you are fully protected, divinely protected, whether it's dark or light, right? You are protected.
Right. And I want to touch on something else, but Sam's been commenting in the chat room, and I don't want to neglect the chat room. And
Okay.
Sam was saying, it seems when we do the right thing as human beings, it backfires. Still can't turn my back on another, even if they have, even if they have me. Oh, meaning they turn their back on her. I couldn't live with that, right? And
Well,
so,
we can't be martyrs either, right? We can't sacrifice ourselves for the benefit of someone else. Can't continuously do that, right? So you have to have boundaries. You have to draw a line on what you're willing to accept and not. right? So there is a difference between doing the godly thing or between doing the, divine calling thing for someone else to help them. I can't see, the chat pops up and it leaves, so I can't read what's coming through. It's so quick. Um, but what I am saying is that you can give all of yourself to someone, and if they continually take advantage, continue to hurt you, continue to take from you, continue to test you, living in our truth, walking our soul's purpose doesn't mean that we have to accept those abuses from other people, right? We do what we feel within our heart that we can do to help out someone, to help out in a certain situation. And then we do that. And then sometimes you have to draw that line and walk away from it and not look back and feel the obligation to continue to give of yourself, even when someone is unappreciative of what you're doing for them or hurting
Right.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. And she says before, she's got a couple of good questions here. But before that, she mentions, I didn't actually die, but I thought I was about to bite the dust, but a calm and peaceful feeling came over me, like it was okay and all good. So similar to what you had happen.
That's exactly how I felt. I was okay with it. If I died, I was okay with it. Yeah.
And
I
so
did.
her,
Yeah.
yeah, so she's got two questions for you. I know we're on the hour. Do you have time to answer some
I,
more questions?
yes, I have time. Let me
Okay.
see. Now, this question did stay up. So let's see. If you want to
Oh,
read it, sorry. Yeah.
it's I can pop it on, and sometimes if it's like a hello, I just put it up real quick. That's
Oh,
why you're
got it.
seeing it and it disappears.
Got it. Okay.
So her first question is, how did you learn to know what feelings are yours and what are not yours? And the second question is, I'm having a hard time understanding whose are whose.
Okay. So, yeah, I can answer that question easily. Meditation. Go within yourself to learn yourself. And meditation works wonders. It doesn't have to be a formal meditation for 20 minutes every day. One of my biggest loves is meditating when the shower water hits me, 5, 10 minutes, whatever it takes, and just reflect. Try to go within and feel. Um, I don't know. Let me see. How can I explain it? So, you ask questions, you meditate on those questions, you ask for divine guidance, and you wait for the answer to appear. And then you will get to know yourself more the more you meditate and the more you reflect on the answers that you receive. I'm a big proponent of journaling, writing down, like after the shower, write down the questions that you asked, write down the messages that you received. And over time, you'll start seeing that pattern, and those answers will become second nature. You'll know. But without taking the time to know yourself and going within, it's very difficult because of all the chatter that goes on in our minds, all of the external um, noise that happens, right? So it's hard to tune in when there's so much going on around us, that it is very beneficial to just take some time out for yourself and to learn about who you are. And your inner voice will then answer those questions for you.
Right. And to kind of piggyback on that, my experience, Sam, has been, if, say, for example, somebody cuts me off on the road and I get unusual and I get angry. Normally, I don't get angry. So then I sit there and I think, okay, why did I get angry? And then it's like, and then I start to feel around me, like you're kind of saying, meditate, and I'll be like, okay, there's a lot of, I'm in traffic. I'm willing to bet 99% I'm not angry. Somebody else is, and I'm picking up on somebody else, and I'll let it go. So I always will watch situations, and when I start acting out of my ordinary, that's when I will sit there and say, okay, is this mine? If it is mine, why am I acting this way?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to reflect as well. That's reflection right there. You just described it.
Right. And she goes on to say, I have to be alone a lot, too much stress around others.
Classic sign of an empath. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
So I'll just put
So
up this.
yeah, so I'm sorry to interrupt, for just really quickly, for people who don't know what an empath is, it's not the technical definition, but it's when you pick up on others' vibrations, on their energy, and it starts affecting you. It's exactly what you just described. It's like picking up on someone else's anger, for example, or all of that energy that surrounds you with all of these beings, all of this people around you, whether they're here on earth or they've crossed over, their energy affects us. So you have to learn to block that energy out and to remove yourself from the situation when it becomes overbearing. So that's what that is that's going on there. When you're an empathetic person, when you're an empath, you pick up on that energy and it affects your psyche, it affects your well-being, and you have to counteract it by removing yourself, by blocking off that energy, by doing whatever it takes for you to start feeling more yourself. So
Right. And I was just going to say, she said, thank you much. And she went on to say, thanks. Awesome answer from you both.
thank you.
And yes, it's not easy to deal with.
No.
So if it was easy to deal with, we all would be doing it. So,
Right, right. Yeah.
all right. And Sherry Piggers popped in to say she loves meditation.
Yeah. Me too. I love to meditate. Definitely love it. It's my me time. So,
Now, I will say I love meditation. And for me, I find my meditation goes along with my mood. Like sometimes I'll meditate to the TV on, sometimes I'll meditate to quiet, sometimes I'll meditate to music.
yeah.
Does do you have like that to where your mood
Yeah.
determines how you meditate, or do you have a regimen where you're like, this is it, this is how it's got to
Yeah.
be?
I never saw it as my mood determining how I meditate, but yeah, you're right. It does depend on what's going on, how I'm feeling. I think music is great to meditate by. Sometimes the traffic, or, I meditate anywhere. I have taught myself to meditate in any circumstance, under any circumstance. So sometimes when it's overbearing, like if I'm in a crowded area and it's loud, I'll zone out and I'll meditate. Right? Not, I don't purposely say, oh, I'm going to meditate. I just find myself doing that naturally. It's like second nature, because it's how I remove myself from that situation and I go back into my zone of calm. And so I'm pretty even keeled with my moods because I'm able to successfully do that in any type of environment. So I am the biggest proponent of telling people that you don't need to have any ritual to meditate. You could meditate anywhere and under any circumstances when you train your mind to do that, to take you to that meditative state. So,
Right. And I kind of feel like we feel like meditation has to be like emptying the mind and doing all these different things, and sometimes I feel like just taking a moment and listening to my thoughts
yeah.
is meditation, because it's like I'm not doing anything, and hearing all of the thoughts and like picking which ones I want to focus on, sometimes I find is more relaxing than sitting there and like straight back and the
And
uh,
forcing yourself to empty your
fingers in a
mind.
certain
Yeah.
position going, okay, this is my mantra, this is how it's going to be. And
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
That doesn't work for a lot of people. So, yeah. So you're not alone with that. So I always say, do what works for you when it comes to that reflection, that meditation, and being in that meditative state. Whatever works for you is the right way to meditate.
Right. And when we were talking earlier, I said that I was going to mention something about the paranormal, but I shifted over to the chat group. Was I find I don't need to do the antagonizing of spirits But I was on an investigation where I was the only one left up with someone who was channeling a spirit, and I looked at them and I could just feel something was going on. And so I'm the last person to promote antagonizing or, confronting spirits. But I actually found myself engaging the spirit and going, I feel you grabbing my arm, but it's burning you, isn't it? And they said, yep. And I said, and you know who I am? And they're like, yes. And I go, it scares you, doesn't it? And they go, yes, it does. And I was like, that was the only time I've ever like physically recorded myself confronting a spirit. And it's like you were saying, it's because I knew I was protected and I was safe to do so. But I think also I knew in my heart nobody was going to be harmed by taking on this spirit and quote unquote putting in his place or just reminding them, hey, got to follow the rules.
Yeah. I have to admit that I have been in many situations where people expect entertainment, and the old me, maybe I don't know if I'm still this way or not. Probably, at some extent, yes. But I have antagonized. Um, I've grown up from that, because that was when I was younger and it was cool and everybody was wanting entertainment. And um, I don't know if it's now because I'm older that I don't feel the need to do that, or because my connection um, is more powerful now. Excuse me. Excuse me. I don't want to cough
Bless
in
you.
anyone's ear. I need some water. Excuse me. But I have been known to antagonize. Now, I am very confrontational when it's a negative energy that won't let go, or that is trying to permeate the safety of the group that I'm with. Then I will antagonize and I will become confrontational. Sometimes I have to be very confrontational. And I don't like being that way, but sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes it's for entertainment, but sometimes it's because it's clearly necessary. Look who came to say hello.
Oh, Pepe.
Say hi, Pepe. Oh, he has no idea what's going
He's like, Mom, it's our time. What's going
on.
on?
Yeah, basically. It's almost his bedtime, not yet. Oh, thank you, thank
Aw.
you, thank you. So anyhow, so
So,
he just wanted attention.
that's totally fine. I'm a huge proponent of that. Mine was in earlier, and I was like, nope, I'm not interrupting the show by bringing him on.
Oh, sorry.
No, no, I meant you were talking
Yeah.
about something and he was kind of whimpering. And so I was
Oh,
like,
got it.
I can't bring you up now because she's talking and I don't want to be rude and look away and
Well,
distract you in your thought.
okay, well, got it. Well, thank you for that, but it would have been okay. So,
Okay.
nice.
Sam is saying flute music. I love to hear when I do. Oh, we're talking about meditating. Need
Okay.
to do it more. Sometimes I have to fight me to actually sit and meditate.
Yeah,
That is
that
true.
happens. I think that happens to all of us. Yeah.
She says, I seem to get followers home a lot. I have to go alone. My dog goes too. Can't find anyone to go with. They say they want to, but push to shove, they don't, and I don't expect it anymore now when they say yes. So I think I know what she's talking about, and that's going on investigations. And I think she's going by herself or with her dog.
Yeah.
So you can do that. I don't recommend it depending on how the
Yeah.
energy of the location is.
Same.
Be-
I agree.
right, because you don't know how that place is going to affect you. You need somebody there to, when you start acting out of the ordinary, can pull you out and ground you.
I agree with you on that. It's very dangerous to go alone. Yeah.
Yeah. She says, love animals better than people. They're true to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, they are,
Yeah.
but it also they play on my emotions. That's true. People do tend. Some people will do that. Some aren't. You just have to find, like I like to call, your true circle of friends and those that will always be there for you.
Yeah.
So, what advice do you have, Alexa, for somebody who does have a follower that follows them home from a location?
It's happened to me plenty of times, especially when I was younger and I wasn't able to stand up for myself. I didn't know how, Um, so I don't know if I said that right. I mean, I was probably too timid to stand up for myself when I was younger, and I would allow it to happen all the time. And sometimes I didn't mind it because I like living in haunted houses. I love paranormal activity around me, so I didn't discourage it. I'm okay with it. But as I got older, I realized how dangerous that is, and so I always make it a point to just verbally call out and say, "You're not allowed to follow me home. Go wherever you want to, but do not follow me home." And I do a lot of protection rituals that are not unique to me, but personal to me, and prayer is one of them. I do smudging, with just sage. Let's see, but mainly it's standing up for myself. I just tell them flat out, don't follow me home. Go wherever you want to, but not in this car. You're not going to my house. You're not welcome there. And this is your place. This is where you belong. And that's how I deal with it. And I haven't in many years had to deal with an entity following me home, but when it happened, it was okay. I was okay with it. So,
Yeah. Um, Sam says that she says she was talking about the spirits. We
yeah,
were as well, Sam.
yeah.
It's sometimes get confused talking about people and spirits because it's similar an aspect. And she says the spirits play on me. I love it too. Um, I can say yes to that as well. Like I used to have in my house a corner of the house to where, or a room. I shouldn't say the house. It was a room that I call Grand Central Station. That all the spirits would pass through from one dimension to another. I guess in my viewpoint, and I recorded it one time, and there was like a fire chief, an Indian, all
Wow.
different types of ages going through there, and I was like, it really is a time central or a Grand Central
Yeah,
Station.
that's
But
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, but you have to be careful doing that. And I had guardians set up on four corners of the property and guards on the room so that just not just any energy could come walking through and messing with the house. So you do have to protect.
Yeah. I actually did have a very negative energy just a few days ago trying to permeate my living space. And I was telling my daughter that all of a sudden the door to my house is under constant renovation for a couple of years already, maybe 3 years. Um, but I just finished the renovation of my bedroom, and everything was fine for the first maybe three weeks or so. This is very recent. And the last few days, maybe a week ago, every time I would enter that bedroom door, it felt like I was going through a portal into evil. And I just fought it and had to put a block and just an energetic block to those thoughts and feelings, because I felt it was so overwhelming that it could have easily overpowered if I allowed it to. And I had to remind myself, this is my house. I don't want to live in a home where it feels unsafe, or where it scares me. And it was beginning to scare me to the core every time I passed through that door. And so I set the intention of that feeling to go away, of that energy being disallowed in my home. And within 2 days or so, maybe 3 days, the feeling went away. But that was like this energy struggle with whatever that entity was that was trying to permeate my living space. It didn't feel good. So,
Right.
so
And
always
so,
speak. Yeah.
yeah. And so that actually gives me an idea of a thought. And I'm kind of curious your take on this. With remodeling, everybody always says when you remodel, you stir up the spirits that are there.
Yeah.
I wondered, though, as well as not just the spirits that are there, but the workers and the lumber and all the tools they bring in, could that be bringing in what's going on? And that's why all of a suddenly there was a shift from, yeah, it was easy to walk into the room to all of a suddenly going, wait a minute, something's
Yes.
off.
So I agree with you on external people bringing in their negative energy or even their positive energy. But in this situation, it was just my dad and I that did the actual physical labor. So we're good. Like there's nothing, we have a great relationship. So, and he's helped me with the rest of the remodeling. Very rarely do we have any external sources come in. So this was something not attached to that. It was something different. And so I don't know other than the remodeling aspect. So let me take it back to a few weeks before. So the reason why we finished this bedroom, I didn't have a bedroom. I had other rooms in the house that I used as a bedroom. I have a pretty nice size house and it's just me and my dog. So I don't care where I set up my bed while I remodel. But in this particular case, in March, I had both of my daughters, one of my daughter's fiance and their baby coming to stay with me. So we put a rush on finishing this huge, beautiful bedroom. And so the house was filled with love. It was filled with people and activity and noise, good, positive energy. Not until they left did this start happening. And so I think that the remodeling itself stirred up and opened this portal of energy in my house, and that it didn't make its presence known until after all things settled, after everyone went back to their respective homes. And when I was left here alone, it's when it manifested. And so I took care of it, but it was pretty scary. I don't get scared easily, so keep that in mind. And it was starting to, fear started to permeate. And so I had to consciously make an effort to stop whatever was trying to infiltrate my home, to just make it stop. And so
Right. And
fortunately, yeah.
yeah, I can only imagine with you being like me that if you were starting to feel fear, that it had to be on a whole nother level then.
It was.
So,
It literally felt like every time I walked through the door's got like an arch, so it's an arched doorway. It felt like I was walking into this portal of evil. That's what it felt like. And it didn't, and I would never go into that room. That was actually the room that I feared to begin with when I bought this house. And that's why it took me such a long time to even get to the remodeling phase of it, because I just didn't want to go in that room ever. Like I spent 3 years without going in that room. I mean, in and out when I needed to, when I absolutely needed to, but hardly ever. And then when all the remodeling took place on that particular room, then it's like, okay, it's that feeling that I had was justified. There was definitely something there, but now it's gone, I think. So it's a
I
little too soon to
wonder,
tell.
yeah, I wonder if it's that you weren't ready to face it, and so that's why it waited till you were ready to face
I
it.
think so. I think yes, because like I said, the house is just filled with so much love and laughter and noise that it just waited for the right time.
Right.
So
So Sam is asking, do you teach others how to learn to find the inner self?
yes, I actually do. So I'm not very good on social media. I'm trying to be better, but I do have a YouTube channel called Goddess Intuition. And if you go on to YouTube, you'll find me there. And there's some resources on there. And I've committed to do better. This week, I've been learning new skills to um, just teach me about social media more than what I know. So she'll find some information on there. I guess you can hear me, so let me tell you, you'll find the information on there if you just go to YouTube at Goddess Intuition. So.
Well, I can tell you from my own experience that yes, social media is a huge learning curve. I'm still learning as well, so I totally understand you on that. I fought it for the longest time, and now I'm like, nope, it's what you got to do.
Yeah, I'm in my 50s, so it's so hard for me to, I mean, it's not hard. I guess I just don't make the effort. We want to like sometimes be stuck in what we know. And the reality is that this world has changed and it's changing, ever evolving, and it just seems sometimes like it's too much to keep up with. And all of that, I mean, energy affects me and everything I do. And when I get overwhelmed with not knowing how to do something, I shut down. And so I have to consciously make the effort now to just stay in the moment and learn social media, learn how to market, learn all of these new things to me. And that's why I'm at right now. So hopefully you'll see improvements on my YouTube channel in the next few weeks, in the next few days and few weeks. So I'm making the effort.
Well, kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
And Sam says, I've learned so much on this show, and I thank you both.
You're very welcome. Thank you for hanging out with us all this time. Thank you.
Yes.
And making it fun and engaging and asking your questions. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you're asking a question here or not, Sam, but I'm going to turn it into a question for you. She says, I feel that when I come home a lot, sometimes I can't even get out the door. So the question I'm going to turn that into is, when you come home and either wanting to leave or enter and you're feeling like you can't, is that the intuition and what we call your intuition trying to protect you and saying, hey, it's not a good time, you really should step out? Or is that more of the energies just saying, hey, we're here, maybe you want to come in, maybe you don't? Do you ever have that happen? And what's your experience on that?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. Yes.
No, I don't ever go through that. Um, I actually feel like my home is my safe spot, even though it was riddled with all this paranormal activity when I first bought the house, and now it's presented itself again. I don't feel that way. I don't allow that energy to control me when I'm at home. I actually don't allow it to control me really anywhere, but I feel that when I come home, this is my safe space. And anything that is external or that maybe was here before me either has to learn to live with me in unison or they can get out because I'm not going to allow that energy to affect me and my peace and my space. So yeah.
All right.
I just don't.
So Sam said in response to that, I got the chat all to myself. I do ask a lot of questions. Sam, we appreciate the questions.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm glad you got the chat to yourself and we got to answer all your questions. And she says, I think in response to my question, she feels like something won't let her in her house.
Yeah, that's not unusual. I mean, that although I don't allow it to happen to me, I know that a lot of people do succumb to that energy. So sometimes energy can be overpowering and overwhelming, and it can force you to react in ways that is beyond your normal self. And I can see it happening. I don't think it's healthy. I think that you need to stand up for whatever is in your home. I would just do cleansings. I'm a big believer in prayer, white light candles burning. All of those things will help protect you and at least provide that extra layer, that extra shield to protect your energy.
Right. And I feel like that's one thing that's not really shared a lot is we feel like we have to live with the ghosts or spirits that are there, and it actually works both ways, that we have the right to state this is our space. So you, like you were saying, you either live with me or you have to leave, and that is totally fine under what I was told is universal law. And whether the spirits are what we would define as positive or negative spirits, they all have to abide by that law. There is no, oh, well, there's a gray area, so I can hang out over here. No, it's if
Yeah,
you
no.
own it, you own it. They don't have a say.
Right. But now being mindful that whatever entity or spirit is in your home or whatever energy resides in your home, they were there before you, right? So it might have been their home before it was your home, and they don't understand that now you're the new owner. I think that's what happened here at my house when I first bought it. I was actually the first person. The house was built like in 1880, and I was the first person to own the house outside of the family that owned it originally. It was handed down, from person to person. I was the first non-family member to own it in their lineage. And I was like, I had a hard time when I first moved in here. I had paranormal investigative group come in and document everything that was going on. It was tough, like the first couple years. And then we learned to live together, or they disappeared. I don't really know. I don't feel their energy except for now recently with this new part of the remodeling that was going on. But you do have to sometimes compromise and make room for whatever spirit energy is there, especially if they own the home before you and may not understand that they are no longer the owner of the house. So, but it's up to us whether we want to allow that shared space, or if we want to put our foot down and be firm and say leave. Right? I'm okay with spirit energy around me, definitely okay with living as long as I don't get bothered. Sometimes I like to get bothered. I like to hear footsteps or unusual noises. I like that. It keeps my spirit going. It gives me energy to know that I'm living amongst spiritual beings. But a lot of people obviously don't want that, or they're afraid and don't want to deal with it. Depends
Right.
on what you're looking for, or how well you can handle it.
So, Sam, I would advise for you is to sit down with it, not, metaphorically, not actually sit down with it, and just lay out some rules and being like, we share this space, so you can't lock me out or you can't lock me in, and just be firm with what you want and say you're free to do whatever you want to do as long as it doesn't interfere with me being able to live here and do what I need to do.
That's perfect.
Let's see. She says, I would tell what I felt before I bought this and have tried to scare me, but they didn't. It's the ones that follow that I have a bad time with, I guess. Oh, long story about that situation. So, yeah, just sit down and just, be clear that, if you want to coexist and if they're not willing to coexist, then own the space, like Alexa said. And so, those are the options. And, good luck. And I hope it works out and that you get access to coming and going from your home like, you want.
Yeah.
So she says, thank you both. Much awesome advice. You're
You're
welcome.
very welcome. You're welcome. All right.
So to close this up, Alexa, I'm kind of
Yeah.
curious what's next for you. With Are you gonna write another book about the afterlife, do more investigating of it, or do you have another project in mind you're thinking of doing along with?
Okay. Well, this book is probably going to be, I'm going to say that this book will cover the next year for me. This is a lot of work putting it together. And so I'm just going to go about, my daily practice of mediumship. And that's my life. So my life is writing and doing mediumship readings, connecting people to the other side. So that's my focus for the next year, is just to um, expand my presence online, and do my book tour starts in June. Excuse me, some water.
Cool. So, do
So
you want
uh,
to promote your book tour?
So yes, so the very first stop is, I'm actually going to Latin America starting in June. So it starts in Mexico. And so for the month of June and July, I will be traveling through Mexico. And then I'll announce the dates for the United States when I'm done with that part of it. So it kicks off on June 9th through the 11th in Mexico City, and it is the Afterlife Connection. And I don't know if we have any viewers from Mexico City, but on my Facebook account, I will show all the exact locations once they are confirmed with the dates and times. And if they could just check that out under Facebook at the Alexa Costa, is where they'll find all that information. But yeah, so thank you so much. My book will be on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and it should be available. It was supposed to be available this month, but it will be available in the month of May, and that will be available for purchase. And they could either download a digital copy or they can get a soft cover on that book.
All right. So, Sam says she will definitely friend you both. Very
Thank you.
cool.
Yeah, we'll look forward to that.
And so, you kind of hinted at it with Facebook and the YouTube. Are those really the only two spots to find you, or where can people find you?
You can also find me on TikTok and Instagram at, well, you can either search for me under Alexa Costa or Goddess Intuition Tarot. So that's how you'll find me on across all social media. So Goddess Intuition Tarot will get you there, or Alexa Costa will get you there as well. Excuse me. I'm
Bless you.
sorry. I keep coughing in your ear. Sorry. It's it.
Uh,
I've been talking too much.
oh, you're fine. And so, I'm going to wrap things up here. So, thank you to Sam and to all the viewers who watched. Thank you again to Alexa for coming on to our show.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone who tuned in.
So, before I close it, Carla, we wish you are sleeping well and wake up recovered. And we look forward to your return next week when we will be with, and I just have to look, Amy Green will be on the show. So we're excited for that. So for all of you out there, if you're going to be investigating this weekend, have fun, be safe, and always remember to write down your investigations experiences, because you can't always catch them on camera. So good night, everyone.